Dear friends, how are you doing today? I'm Mark Golub, and all the mothers in our JBS viewing family, I hope yesterday was a lovely and special day for you, wherever you may have been, wherever your children or grandchildren may have been. And again, aren't we lucky to live in the age of FaceTime and Zoom and other video platforms, which enable us to connect with people we love, especially on special occasions. Anyway, to all of you who are mothers, you are our treasure. Fathers are wonderful too. I love being a father to our 5 children, and I'm a Saba to our grandchildren. But there's nothing like a mother. And our Jewish tradition says there's nothing like mother love, which is the actual translation of the word rachamim, which is normally translated as mercy. But rachamim comes from the noun rechem in Hebrew. And rechem means womb. And rachamim is that exquisite, unique connection a mother has with a child she carries in her womb for 9 months and then brings into the world. And the devotion of mothers and the unconditional love that mothers tend to have for their children is divine. It's from heaven. And truly, a caring, loving mother is the greatest gift a person can have from heaven. Of course, in a traditional Jewish household, every Erev Shabbat is a sort of Mother's Day, when the prayer Eshet Chayil is recited, normally translated as woman of valor, but it's simply a prayer acknowledging and extolling the virtues of the mother of the household. In America, Mother's Day reminds us again of how important and cherished our mothers are. And I remember my mother, Rebecca Newman Golub of blessed memory, on Mother's Day. And I'm continually struck by my extraordinary good fortune to have my wife, Ruth, as the mother of our children, the most wonderful mother in the world. She is the loveliest thing God ever made. And I'm sure many of you feel the same way about your wives and mothers. But I happen to know that my wife Ruth is the loveliest thing God ever made. And I and our children are blessed by her goodness and love every single day. And that's what I hope each of you felt from your children and grandchildren and husbands this past weekend. So we're all still in lockdown due to the coronavirus. We're in this together. And I'm with you, and all of us here at JBS are with you. And we hope our programming is of some comfort to you, especially if you're living alone, and that we're providing hours of information and entertainment and enabling you to stay connected to and participating in Jewish life. Friday night and Saturday morning services. And we'll have a full array of Shavuot services toward the end of this month. But how are Jews doing in their own communities throughout the country? One of the things we'd like to do on our series, Gam Yachad, together during COVID-19, is speak to rabbis and Jewish leaders in various cities and communities to get their perspective on some of the issues related to this pandemic. Again, from their perspective. So I'm extremely pleased to welcome a friend back to JBS. You may have seen him on L'chaim. You may have read his superb columns online, his sermons online. He is the founding rabbi of conservative Congregation B'nai Tzedek in Potomac, Maryland. and he also makes a fabulous contribution to world Jewry as president of the Rabbinic Cabinet of the Jewish Federations of North America. Stuart Weinblatt. Stuart, thanks so much for joining us once again on JBS.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, Stuart, what's it been like in your community in Potomac as, you know, your whole community has been dealing with coronavirus?
Everything's totally normal here. We're going out, we're shopping, we're doing everything. I'm just kidding. We, like everyone else, are dealing with the same kind of a situation. Our members are at home. Most of them are not going to work. Most of them are working from home and have, the challenges of having young children working at the same, going to school, virtual school, as they're trying to work and they're trying to manage and juggle everything. So I think we're striving, we're struggling and coping just as everyone is. I think now we're into what is about week 7 or 8 or so, being a sense a little bit of that cabin fever that people have. But again, our situation really is probably not unique to what everyone else is experiencing.
Stuart, how frightened are members of your congregation of getting the coronavirus, especially those who are in the demographic that it would be hardest hit? How frightened are they?
Yeah, I think, look, the scares people have are severalfold. Number one is a scare, the scare of the unknown, of the health concern. People are also concerned about the economics, the concern about the social life, what that's going to look like. But in regard to the specific question about the health itself, I think people are very conscious, very cautious, very much taking the precautions that have been recommended. You know, when I see members of the congregation, which is very, very limited, they are wearing the mask and have the gloves and so on. When I'm out and I do see people or just in my neighborhood even, you know, you just notice even as people are walking down the street that people automatically move to either side. And I think it's appropriate. It's what we have to do. We have to do this.
So in your community, people are social distancing in the appropriate ways.
Absolutely. Yes. We have not held services now for, I don't even know how long. I think it was late March was when we held our last live service in the building. In fact, what we did was we broadcast from the building, and then after that, we moved away from doing that. So the way we're doing our services now is the cantor is at his home. I'm at my home. I have an associate rabbi. He's at his home as well. It now, by the way, takes probably 2 to 3 times longer to prepare one of those regular services.
Yes. Why is that, Stuart?
You're hearing that from other people as well, I take it, huh? Yeah. First of all, before this, I would prepare my Devar Torah, my sermon. I would prepare the parts of the service I would need it to do, and things would be pretty standard. Number one, now we have to trim the service a little bit. I think you have to be considerate and conscious of people's Zetzfleisch, the ability to sit in front of a screen for limited periods of time. Second of all, I find that as a result, we need to trim a little bit. And then whereas before I might be able to just to give a head nod to the cantor and he would be able to read my mind, now we have to plan in advance what we're going to cut, what we're going to do, what we're going to add. Also, the effort to bring in participation. So it's not just the 3 of us who are doing the part of the service, but to engage congregants, to get them involved, requires extra time and extra planning.
How do you do that?
And in a number of different ways. We, by the way, have had several bar and bat mitzvahs now. We've had 3 b'nai mitzvah, which we've done via Zoom. I think, and each one we're getting a little more facile at it, a little easier to be able to facilitate the changes and things like that. Just one minor example. We put up the Torah reading as a share screen so people are able to follow along, recognizing not everybody may have a chumash at home.
Very good.
And what we do now, which we just did this week, is when the aliyah is being chanted before and after the Torah reading, we take it off of the screen share so that people can see the people who are doing the aliyot. So that's a minor little tweak, but I think it brings people in. The other part of it, to answer your question, is that we ask our members, if they would like to participate. We try and assign various Torah readings, various parts of the service. And also one of the things that's been so wonderful are some of the children who participate and who lead some of the, especially Kabbalat Shabbat Friday night service.
That's all fabulous. The other difference that rabbis experience is they're not in front of live people.
Yeah.
And, It's now much more like what I do all the time. I'm talking to a camera almost all the time when I'm on JBS. You're now speaking to a screen. You're talking to a camera too, and people are watching you.
Right.
Stuart, as a rabbi, how does that change the experience for you, that you don't hear the laughter? You don't, there is, even when people are quiet, you understand this. They are in some way communicating with the rabbi. How do you deal with this yourself now that you are not in the presence of your congregation?
It's a real challenge. And by the way, before I became a rabbi, when I was in college, I actually used to do stand-up comedy. So you very much feed off of that response from people, and you need to be able to see and feel the reactions. So it's a whole different challenge as well. I do give a Devar Torah, and I'm speaking into the camera, and I'm giving it, and I'm delivering it, and I'm hoping that people are listening. I'm hoping, but when you speak publicly and you get people's reactions, it's, what was it? Marshall McLuhan talked about it as the difference between a cold media and a warm media, and being able to feel and sense people's reactions. I want to share with you something that's interesting, and that is that we didn't realize, but somehow the chat version, the chat function of our during services was turned off a week or two ago. And several people said to me, "Why is it turned off? Don't you realize, Rabbi, if we were sitting in shul, we would be schmoozing with each other, and we need to be able to have that little bit of contact." And so it's very interesting. Somehow people find ways to connect. And so I said, "Gee, I didn't even know that was the case, or how it happened so immediately." We revised our settings, and people were able to chat. I think Zoom should call it maybe schmooze instead of chat. I think that would be a good idea.
Stuart, has your message, or have the messages you're giving changed? And the reason I ask that, first of all, people should know you are your sermons are published. You're a great writer. You're a great speaker. You're one of the leading rabbis on the American scene. You're in the conservative movement, and you're recognized not only by your movement, by rabbis everywhere. You are what is known to us, your colleagues, as a rabbi's rabbi. But you write all the time, and you publish a lot of what you write. And a lot of it tends to be responsive to what things are going on in the news. You write an awful lot about Israel, and you've written about anti-Semitism. During the COVID virus and this pandemic, and people's focus is so different, have you found that whatever your message is on Shabbat in a sermon you write, are you writing differently now than you were, 2 months ago?
Again, the first factor, and by the way, thank you for those very gracious comments. I'm most humbled by that.
They're all true.
Thank you. And what I wanted to say was, when this the pandemic first occurred, I had a series of fireside chats that I did to share with the congregation and whoever wanted to listen on Facebook Live. And I wanted to try and bring a message from Judaism of hope and of how we've coped with these kinds of things before. And I've transferred that now within the context of the Shabbat services. So I do try and give a Devar Torah, and I try and connect it somehow to what's transpiring, to what's going on. By way of example, this last week I spoke about Lag BaOmer, which is coming up this Monday night, tonight. And Lag BaOmer, when there was a plague of 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, who were mysteriously murdered by this plague, which we do not know much about it. Obviously, one of the things is that there are connections we never saw before. So the short answer to your question is I very much try to connect what we're doing to give people some kind of a message. A week or two ago, when we read the parsha, the discussion where Miriam had to go out of the camp because she had a skin disease, and therefore she was quarantined. Well, there's a verse which tells us that Moses and the children of Israel did not move forward until she was able to come back into the camp. And then the Midrash says God did not want to proceed unless she came back into the camp as well. And so there I was able to tie that in the importance of every individual, and the importance of going through this together, and the importance of thinking those who are isolated and so on. So the connections are definitely there.
That's lovely. That's lovely, Stuart. By the way, are there a lot of people in your congregation who are forced to live alone?
We have elderly members of the congregation who are living alone, and as I'm sure many other synagogues are doing, we try and be in touch with them. As a matter of fact, just earlier I was in touch with one of my members who said to me they were going to pick up groceries and deliver it to an elderly member of our congregation. And so it's the kind of thing where there are people who are alone and are somewhat isolated, and we very much, I want to say one thing, and that is I think out of this, there are one of the things that we've felt is the challenge that you spoke about earlier is not being able to see each other, not being able to connect, not being able to have programs and being there together and so on. And yet, at the same time, we make this change. We adapt, and we use the modern technology available to us so very well. By the same token, as we are going into this kind of a new situation, we're also trying to figure out how do we connect to people, and if anything, I think being a part of a congregation, part of a synagogue community is more important than ever. And I venture to say people feel it. We've talked about the fact that we've held our services online through Zoom. And they're open to anyone, by the way. You can just go to our website, bnaitzedek.org, to get the link and to join. And we have people come who've never come to services before, and they come now on a regular basis. So the challenge for us will be, after we go back to resuming our presence in our buildings and all, how do we still make sure those people are part of that community?
Yes, that will be an enormous challenge. Yeah. All right, I want to discuss something philosophically with you. Stuart, as the numbers of people contracting the disease begin to lower, and the curve seems to be flattening, the focus of much of the attention now is beginning to turn from how we care for the large number of people who contract the virus and who ultimately may need hospital care, to when and how we reopen society, end the lockdown of various states and cities, and restart the economy.
Yes.
I want to know your thoughts about when and how American states, American communities should end self-quarantine.
Well, I think, first of all, I want to answer the question by saying I think we have to be guided by general principles. And in that context, the Rabbinical Assembly published a wonderful series of guidelines of what are the Jewish ideals. And obviously, pikuach nefesh, saving life, has to be supreme. And within the context of our understanding that this is a temporary situation, that eventually we will get through. I think we have to judge it to a large extent based upon the numbers. I think we have to judge it to a large extent based upon the information we get from our health professionals. I serve on a task force of Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, which is for religious institutions. And it's very interesting because there we're trying to grapple with that statewide. And every community is different, by the way. On this task force, which we do virtually, there are Black Baptist ministers who have thousands of people in their church. And some of them are having parking lot meetings. Some of them, by the way, some of the people who are part of this group have expressed the feeling that, we should be able to just go right back in. But most understand that even if and when that happens, so I don't have a crystal ball, I can't answer the question, but even when it happens, there will need to be hand sanitizers. There will need to be, make sure everyone's wearing masks. We need to think about the items that are used multiple times, that have multiple touches, such as talitot and sidurim. That maybe we put those in a separate area, used and unused, and let them, be desanitized for a couple of days and the requisite number of days. Spacing, that, we will have to have spaces between us. So the other thing, answer to your question, is it may also have to evolve in stages. That's what we've been talking about here in the state of Maryland. Is a phase 1 and then a phase 2 and a phase 3. And I think there's great wisdom in that in terms of gradually figuring this out.
Okay, but it seems like you are very open to the idea of trying to reopen society and restart the economy. Do I understand you correctly?
I would absolutely, but within the appropriate time period. I don't think it's here yet. I think it may take at least a few more weeks or so. We need to make sure that we that term, to get ahead of the curve and to bring the numbers down and so on. Absolutely. But it may not be until late summer, early fall. for many of our religious institutions.
And you also make the point it could be different for different communities.
Different size community, different size facilities and things like that, and also different within different areas and denominations. There's so many variables here. It's not one size fits all.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Philosophically, I want to come back to the Pikuach Nefesh comment you made. Pikuach Nefesh in the Jewish tradition is an idiom that means saving life. And there's a very famous Talmudic dictum: if one saves a single life, one is credited as having saved the entire world, all humanity. And conversely, if one destroys a single life, it is as if one has destroyed all of humanity. And there are some people, Stuart, who are using that to argue that society should not reopen if even a single life is in jeopardy. And I find that to be Jewishly, first of all, I find it to be grossly simplistic, but I also find it to be a misreading of the Jewish tradition as a whole, and I wanted your comment on it.
Again, we're talking about the different values. Well, that is certainly one. You opened the program by talking about the importance of the word Rahmanut, which means compassion, which comes from the word Rechem, which is related to the word mother. So it all ties together. I do think we have to have a sense of compassion. We have to have a sense also of people's need for that social contact.
Yes.
We are social animals. Yes. We thrive on that kind of an interaction. But by the same token, we can't lose our senses about this. There is a middle ground. And, I've seen some of the pictures where people were just flocking to beaches without any precautions or anything. Very, very frightening. The pictures of the people in Michigan who were in armed guards came with the AK-47s armed, insisting that everything must be reopened and not opening, not having their faces covered. That is absolutely, there's no role in society for that. I would say the following, one of the quotes that you quoted from the Talmud, I'll also quote as well, where it says in Pirkei Avot, one should pray for the welfare of the government. And it says, were it not for the welfare of the authorities, everyone would eat each other alive.
Absolutely.
And so we have to have a certain degree of deference and of respect for those tough decisions that are being made by courageous individuals.
By the way, as you look at your community and as you think about the future, and we only have about a minute left here, what do you hope now for just the summer? What does Stuart Weinblatt hope for his congregation and his family life in your own home for the summer? What do you hope for us?
Well, for one, I hope for good weather. But in addition to that, I hope we'll be able to gradually be able to open up our places again. The camps are really struggling with this right now, because one of the questions is, if we cut it off for 1 year, how will they feel that next year? How will they feel about coming? Do you get into that new normal? So to the extent that we're able to begin gradually to return to the normalcy that we knew, that would be my hope and my prayer but it's going to come about gradually, not overnight.
Absolutely. Well, look, you've been a dear friend, and I appreciate the way you always let me call on you to get your insight for JBS. I hope during this coronavirus pandemic, you'll let me call you from time to time, and we'll just bat ideas around. In the meantime, kol tuva hatzlacha, you and your family, stay safe, be well. All of your congregations stay safe, be well. Keep writing, keep talking, and keep leading us, Stuart. You are very important to all of us. Thank you, my friend.
My honor and my pleasure to be with you. Thank you, and best wishes to all your viewers.
Stuart Weinblatt, the founding rabbi of Conservative Congregation B'nai Tzedek in Potomac, Maryland, and he's also the president of the Rabbinic Cabinet of the Jewish Federations of North America. I hope you enjoyed hearing his thoughts and learning how his community is coping with the coronavirus. So let's look at the coronavirus numbers for May 11th, 2020. In the United States, we're approaching 1.4 million people diagnosed with the coronavirus, with the recovery rate going up another 4% since last week to 18%. So while there are now around 80,000 deaths from the virus, the rate of mortality remains under 6%. And the vast, vast majority of people who contract the virus in America recover well over 90% of the time. In Israel, the numbers remain dramatically good. In the last week, the total number of diagnosed cases rose by fewer than 2% to 16,500. There were only 14 deaths, so that Israel still has fewer than 260 fatalities from the virus. And the recovery rate in Israel went up another 11% and now tops 70% in rate of recovery in Israel. And what the numbers show in both the U.S. and in Israel is a flattening of the curve. All good news. I also want to wish a Mazal Tov to a devoted JBS viewer and a dear, dear friend, Elise Lev, who celebrated her birthday in the Villages of Florida this past Friday, May 8th. Happy birthday, Elise. You're a very special person. And remember, if you have a Mazel Tov, a birthday, an anniversary, a milestone, an achievement, or if there's someone you'd like me to mention in a Misha Berach list, or if you have a yortzeit and no synagogue setting in which the name would be read, please send your names, your information to me. I will be honored to read your names on JBS. Simply be in touch with me at jbscommunity@jbstv.org, jbscommunity@jbstv.org. And if you wish to be in touch with me personally, you can email me at rabbigolub@jbstv.org. My thanks as always to our director, Sloan Copeland, and to the producer of this edition of Gam Yachad, Together During COVID-19, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Stay safe and be well, my friends.